Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there, welcome back.
This is a fun one, and actually, this could go on for days and nights on end talking about giants. And we're going to talk about who were the Nephilim, and the Watchers will mention as well. Maybe go into that a little bit deeper too. Tales of giants exists in every single corner of the world, every single country of the world. It's a universal thing.
It's a universal thing and a dimensional thing. So I remember it was maybe a couple years ago, we did a video on giants and we actually got in trouble for that.
Well, and that was specifically when we were in Nevada, and we were talking about an instance in Nevada where a particular tribe had cornered a giant inside a cave. And, this is a story that is taken as fact, and there are actually, many references to it. And we made a video about it because they basically set a fire, and then when he came out, they shot him full of arrows and got rid of him. It's actually universal, kind of, too, this extermination of giants. And, I was so surprised to see that they demonetized and they didn't want that video up. Now, anytime you see a little wiki, you know you're on track.
Yeah.
Yeah, whenever you do a wiki on the Anunnaki, the Anunnaki are a group of deities. Yeah, we know. Anything that's against their official narrative, you get your little corrective wiki. And again, who trusts Wikipedia in the first place? It's supposed to be something that's done by the people, and anybody could edit it at any time, yet somehow it becomes the official version.
I know. It's something that they have placed on a pedestal to encourage everybody to look toward and respect as, the final say of information. So this is how the controllers work. They put the path they want us to take right in front of us. And, if we don't follow down that path, well, there can be consequences.
And this is where it's so good to go and look at other traditions, other tales, from other people, from as many other people as you possibly can, because they have censored the main part of this, but there's still stories in little tribes that remember exactly what really happened. And it's been passed down, generation from generation. And this is why so many indigenous people of the world have had their cultures erased and have been brought into mainstream religion, because it's taking away the narrative, taking away all the traces of who really were the Nephilim and the other beings that we would refer to as giants. Most people are probably introduced in the Western world to giants in the story of David and Goliath, right? Many of us, that's the first time we hear of giants. But tales of giants abound everywhere, and we still have people that actually are giants among us. And I remember this gentleman, his first name, I think, it's Robert Wadlow. Again, giants tend to not live too long when people have this hereditary, quote-unquote, condition. And you could see how tall he was. He was close to 8 feet tall. I think he was something like 7'10". Of course, we see basketball players. If you've ever seen an NBA game in person and you see guys that are 7 feet tall, they seem so gigantic to us. How big would somebody that was 12 to 16 feet tall seem? How about even bigger? So, Genesis 6, and it came to pass. And again, one thing we learn is that the Bible is the official version, so to speak. It's the version that's given to us and the masses in a Reader's Digest sort of way. It actually is taking from many different other stories and abbreviating them. This is something that we can find to be true by finding the longer, more original sources. And so it says, and it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, and that they were fair. Okay, so the sons of God, or the sons of the gods, are attracted to humans. Somebody with a light body, a being that's pure pure spirit, pure energy, pure consciousness would be attracted to human flesh. You know, there's a Buddhist technique if you want to overcome any sort of lusting, where you actually look at the person that is the object of your desire and just view the processes on the inside. See the veins, see the organs pumping, see every bit of the interior of the body, and it does help overcome that, what you might view as a weakness. Why in the world would non-physical beings view something, a lump of flesh, as beautiful? It doesn't really make any sense. And so they took wives of all that they chose. And again, these words, like whenever you see Lord, it could be El, it could be Yah, it could be Elohim, it could be a variety of different words that they all just basically make out to be Lord in a more generic sense. My spirit shall not always strive with man, for he is also flesh, and yet his days should be 120 years. There were giants in the earth in these days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. The same became the mighty men which were of old, men of renown. So right there, mighty men of old, men of renown, that doesn't sound negative. One other thing that I want to go back to and really take a peek at is verse 3. My spirit shall not always strive with man, for he is also flesh, and yet his days shall be 120 years, limiting the human lifespan. And that's exactly what the controllers have done. They've limited our lifespan by everything that's in the air, everything that's in the food we eat, even the signals that are all around us, the EMF, the things that are wafting down every day from the unmarked silver planes that spread all sorts of different things, bacteria and viruses, as well as aluminum and barium, and who knows what else, spiky little things coming down in the air. So, obviously, when we look at that, and I just want to go off on a little tangent again, we talk about the Vedic yugas. We see that in the Satya, the golden age, human beings were adept in meditation, possessed unbelievable strength and longevity. The Vedic texts state that humans during the golden age lived for up to 100,000 years. No disparity among cultures. So in other words, everybody did their own thing, they had their own way, but yet they didn't have definitive borders saying, this is mine, you can't come here. They didn't war amongst each other. They got along just fine. If you like somebody's style of cooking and maybe you enjoyed their music, you went over that way and you enjoyed it, but you didn't attack them. It's just a totally different way of thinking, way of life. Everyone enjoyed worldly comforts, lived in perfect harmony with the natural environment, no famine, no war, no conflict, complete peace on earth. And then when we go down to the Silver Age, the Treta Yuga, you see now this, and we're going to touch on the Greek ages briefly again. This is when things started to deteriorate a little bit. And here we have humans living 10,000 years, 1/10. And then the Dwapara Yuga, and this we could equate to the Bronze Age. You start getting wars as we're heading down towards the Kali Yuga. And, everything religiously changes. Things start to get separate. There starts to be partitions. And humans still did live up to 1,000 years. Ever wonder why the Sumerian kings list have people ruling for tens of thousands of years? Because people actually did live for tens of thousands of years.
Yeah, I think they make it sound like it's completely impossible, considering the time that we're in. But when we're in these dark yugas, we are kept away from information. And I just want to go back for a moment and speak about all of these things that are put around us that shorten our lifespan. Not only do they put things like the EMFs in front of us and stuff in our food, we end up paying for stuff that shortens our life. They say these FIVEG things are miraculous and they're wonderful. Just, give us some money and we'll give you a connection all the time. So everything is so backwards right now. And we need to learn to take our power back, find our own understanding of things, and create our own path, reclaim our sovereignty. That's first and foremost. And then I think we can start enjoying the life that many of us really, really want to live.
So then when we get, towards the end of the Dwapara, Mother Earth becomes overburdened with corrupt leaders that completely abandon any pure path in favor of selfishness and just blind violence. And, again, that all leads towards the Kali Yuga. And again, we're under different leadership. And really, we do have a state of anarchy in the Golden Age. It's an anarchy, meaning there's no central authority. The only central authority is basically love and compassion and understanding the oneness. We don't need rulers. We don't need rulers. And in the Kali Yuga, people live 100 years at the most. So it's in agreement with the biblical statement that the max people can live is 120 years. And then we look over to the Greek version, and it's basically given us the same thing. It talks about the Golden Age, where people lived long lives just like the gods, never knowing sorrow or toil. We didn't have to work, and again, it's the Garden of Eden. The Golden Age is the Garden of Eden. That's the Satya Yuga. That's the Garden of Eden. As we go on down, everything changes, so you could see, and they're equating the Silver and Bronze Ages with Zeus taking over from the Titans. And the Titans can be viewed in many ways as elemental forces, or they're also giants.
Mm-hmm.
Shh.
We got to be careful with that word.
Yes, the Titans were massive giants, and Cindy has remote viewed beings that are so enormous in size as to make entire planets look small.
Huge. I mean, huge, huge, huge. And, you might look at one stone that is broken apart. Well, what if that broken up stone were pieces of flesh?
So it's the Golden Age in Greek myth. Mortals lived like gods, never knowing sorrow or toil, and when they died, it was as if they're falling asleep. No one worked or grew unhappy. Spring never ended. This is because, again, the earth did not have the moon there. There was no tilt. There were no brutal storms. There were no nasty earthquakes. All this is a byproduct of the controllers. And, when people died, they became daimones. Daimones? People became demons? Well, yeah, it later became converted to demons. Everything is totally backwards. The Devis, right, which is the same spelling as devil, Devis are the highest class of benevolent beings, as far as that are not source. They're magnificent beings, but yet, again, what would the dark ones that want to literally, control you, bleed you dry, and even try to steal your soul away from you if they possibly could? Well, they're going to make you think that the real good ones are the bad ones. And they're going to make you think that they are the good ones. It's only obvious they control. Who controls the world? The adversary controls the world. That's literally what Satan means. And what's the biggest, religions in the world? They're Abrahamic, the Judeo-Christian Islamic ones, the modern, because again, they couldn't control Christianity when it came out. It was spreading like wildfire. They made an official version. And that's what the Catholic Church came out of. But so did really all the rest of the churches after that, because everything else, as far as scriptures, quote unquote, that weren't part of the official version were burned. Massive book burnings. What happened to the Library at Alexandria? It was wiped out. Tremendous knowledge of past ages was wiped out. Again, they control. They control through lack of information and then feeding us misinformation. This is how they work. So we see it corresponds. The Greek version, and again, this is from 500 plus BC. And again, what's the oldest version, complete oldest version of the Old Testament? 900 AD. How about any complete New Testament book? About 300-ish, 3 to 400 AD. AD. So the Vedic and the Greek here versions are much older stories than what we get from the Bible. The Bible is, again, it's the controller version. And I know that that is a big wake-up call for many people, and some people can't handle it. Again, they can't handle the truth.
Well, it's difficult and it's scary because we grow up learning a certain thing, and then our understanding of learning this is if you step outside of this box, you could burn in hell forever. And then you have this feeling of, wow, if I learn something different, I'm just going to blink out and I'll never exist again. And for children, that's a real thing. And then you grow up with that like ingrained in your body and in your mind. So it does make it difficult to step back, but it's okay.
And again, there is a source of all things, and that source ultimately can be referred to as love. That's the overriding energy of creation is out of love. And then there is a creator of the universe. And yes, Yeshua was real, but it wasn't about a blood sacrifice. It was all about teaching exactly the nature of the universe, those things that we are taught when we're in a golden age. And then you have the Book of Enoch, which was discovered in Ethiopia, the oldest translation. And, again, this talks about the Watchers. And again, to me, once I read this all through and realized that they talk about these Watchers being bound up to the end of time, and then I know the history of the planet, which has been nonstop warfare, strife, constantly, from time before this book was ever written, and up to now, after, it's never changed. So to blame the Watchers and saying they're fallen angels and they're basically tied up until the end of time when they'll be let out loose for a little while, it doesn't make any sense. And again, what is an angel? Well, angel literally means a messenger. That's what it means in the original Greek, which is what most of the New Testament was in, Greek and Aramaic, and then in Hebrew, it translates messenger again. So again, distortion, thinking everything is fallen angels. Again, you got to wonder why. Well, because, what are starseeds light workers? Well, they're beings that could be up in 50 or higher, so they could be up in the heavenly realms, in the celestial realms. They choose to come down and help the rest of humanity, lift their way up. So let's demonize them. Again, let's demonize. Let's devaize. This is all the distortion of the controllers. The word angel is an English translation of the Greek word angelos, or angelos, and malach from the Old Testament. Both words mean messenger. Did John Kerry really visit Antarctica on Election Day? This is going back to February 12th, 2016. Russian Orthodox Patriarch visited Antarctica only 6 days after meeting with Pope Francis in Havana. And this is Stephen Banoon. And again, you can see a title, Fallen Angels Imprisoned in Antarctica Are Still Alive. Fallen Messengers. Start to realize what you're talking about, because we're still talking in Santa Claus and Easter Bunny and Tooth Fairy terms without really distinguishing that we're talking about interdimensional extraterrestrial beings. And again, it's because the only tradition you're going to find that thinks that we're it, that Earth is the only place with life, is the official Abrahamic version. And even at that, there's references, if you look deep, especially in the mystical traditions, which had to maintain a secrecy. They had to be occult, meaning hidden, because if not, they would be burned alive. They would have been put to death. If they, again, let the cat out of the bag, that, there's other beings all around us all the time. They don't want you knowing that. If the world is actually ruled by beings that are not human, they're going to want to convince you that there's no beings that are not human, other than maybe angels and demons.
Right. And even to this day, a lot of people get in trouble for having the understanding that there is entities all around us all the times. In fact, there's many people who would put family members in a hospital, to take certain medications, because why? They keep hearing things, they keep seeing things, and they can't seem to control what's going on in their brain. They can't seem to control the traffic. But a lot of times this person is probably just picking up with their little antenna all kinds of information out there, and we just really don't know what to do with it. How do we direct it? What do we do with it? And that's where the meditation, mantras, and calming the soul all come into play, because then you can start to get a handle on that stuff. There's no need for doctors with these situations. It's someone is very, very special. They have a thing that they can do, and it should be appreciated, because we can see into the other realms now very, very soon. And I think it's happening with so many people right now. It's just a common understanding that the fourth dimension, people can perceive things in the fourth dimension all over the place right now. And we're not too far from that reality where we can see with our two eyes.
So, what happened in Antarctica? Well, they were meeting with a messenger from the Anunnaki, to tell humanity what the plan was going to be. And he's got it kind of right there, because, just kind of looking at it from a wrong view, but he's got it right in that, this is exactly what I got. If HRC was to become president, then what we're seeing now with the global situation, WW#3, would have happened 4 years earlier or so. But instead they pushed it back, and they pushed it into this timing, because this is the most opportune timing for them. This is the Pluto return. They understand the astrological impact of it. There's a lot of things coming right now. Rahu and Ketu are going to be moving into more advantageous positions for global conflict, and we have that conjunction of Saturn and Mars. So this is the optimum timing. They were told that what they were going to do is they were going to install number 45 as the president, let things build, let the tensions build, let it slow boil, and that's what happened. Now, he's referring to them trying to meet with the guardians. Yes, these are extraterrestrials that we're talking about. It is an extraterrestrial thing. Again, when you're looking from a biblical lens, you're looking at a very, very short-sighted, distorted lens. These beings, these leaders, they do their thing over in Bohemian Grove, and what do? Well, they have rituals to contact a messenger, again, and get some direct knowledge from direct conversation with interdimensional beings that are not of our particular density, or not even our planet as their home being. And this is the leadership, as we look at two former presidents, that runs the world now. Giants are everywhere we look. Now, is it just, saying that this is a great being? That's what they'll tell you is the official explanation. This is the Pharaoh. This is, a divine being. This is God on earth in so many ways. And all this comes from the times when, the Anunnaki were here with us, but also the remembrance of benevolent ones and just other beings that are, even in some cases, indifferent, just here for trade, so to speak, just here to learn, to explore, to see what our culture is like. There's been so many different beings that have been walking upon the planet that are not of the planet, or necessarily of the same concurrent density that we're on as we change density, as we go into and out of the photon belt. So, you could read all you want, from the biblical point of view, and this is biblical archaeology, and all this is going to be about maintaining the illusion that's given to us in the Bible, and then also we get it in the Quran, in the Talmud. And when you look at the official version, again, it's the version that 60+% of the world believes, and thus it's the mainstream version. This is MSNBC, this is CNN, this is Fox News, this is Washington Post, this is the New York Times. When we see these stories about the giants, yet every single culture on the planet has stories of giants. And here, we see Gilgamesh holding a lion like it's a little putty tat, and you could see a lion next to a normal size, probably 6 foot tall human, and get an idea how big these beings are, how, even a lion wouldn't intimidate them. They could just literally lift it up like a little putty tat. there are many different types of giants that have been upon this earth too. And we will touch on Tiamat more, because there's a direct correlation between the massive giants, the big giants, in which 12 to 16 foot tall Anunnaki or a Draco even would not maybe come up to their knee even. So there are many different layers to this story of who are the giants, because there were many different giants.
Yeah, I mean, just things that are really not very fathomable because of how we've been raised, the information that we've been given. How can we believe in these things that are so outlandish? How could we trust anyone when they're just telling tall tales? But no, I mean, everybody has a little bit of this information inside of them. Inside of your DNA can be unlocked and let loose bits and pieces of information, and we can all put this story together ourselves. And I think that's the most important thing about the oneness that we all share, is the information that we can bring to the table to understand our own history from the way we see it, not from the way they want us to see it.
Yeah, and of course we could look at every single photo and say, Photoshop and everything, and we could distrust anything, but and you could read into the legends and think people are always exaggerating. We were like grasshoppers to them. Maybe that meant that they were 7 foot tall. Maybe that meant like they were the average NBA player, because people also tended to be shorter in past ages. But it's curious too, because we do have some species of hominids upon this planet that were way stronger than us currently, and we're told we're the pinnacle, yet they did have bigger brains, much thicker, heavier bones, were stronger and hardier, and somehow they didn't make it. And we have legends all over of people banding together and killing these giants. And I remember looking at this, I think when I was 10 years old at first. See, this has always been something that's fascinated me since I was able to start reading at like 5. I've always studied on all this, as well as going deep in. And this photo, I believe, was taken in the Sierra Nevada, 1880s, 1890s, I want to say, in California. And here's an Indian cemetery, Santa Rosa Island, containing abalone shells, radiocarbon dated at 7,070 years. Tops of skulls were painted red. Several skeletons measured over 7 feet tall. So many giant bodies were dug up in the Americas that it would overwhelm. Yet, who comes along? You know who.
Mm-hmm.
The Smithsonian comes along and just takes these, just like the Vatican has taken so many of our records and just so much evidence that would give us a truer idea of our history. And, of course, many of the bodies are buried in the middle of the ocean right now. No flesh left. All the fish would have gobbled it up a long time ago. And yet there's stories all over the globe of humans interacting with these giants, sometimes getting along just fine, other times not the case. There's many stories, too, of the first colonists coming over, the conquistadors coming over, and seeing a race of giants that, actually kind of like the size of a lot of Bigfoot that we get. And we do have a channeled message that we're going to share. It's from White Buffalo Calf Woman, who is one of our guides, about who are the Nephilim. As you can see, these are ancient paintings that were done showing a race of giants interacting with the people coming from the quote-unquote old world over to the new. Interesting too, this little guy looks kind of hairy, doesn't he? Woman and boy of Patagonia in South America receiving beads from Commodore, now Admiral Byron, Lord Byron. Valuable discoveries. Voyage around the world. He encountered giants, and some of them kind of hairy. Interesting, is it not? Top 10 giant discoveries in North America. Of course, there you go. Smithsonian scientists identified at least 17 skeletons that stood over 7 feet tall in their annual reports. including one example that was 8 foot tall and a skull with a 36-inch circumference from Anna, Illinois. This was in the Smithsonian Annual Report of 1873. The average human skull is 20 inches, so that's almost double the size of the average human skull. And all this, I mean, I remember looking at so many of these headlines and clippings in ages past, and it gets harder and harder to find them. They found so many giants, it just is overwhelming. And here we see some of them, Serpent Mound, Ohio, and I've been in this area, and it has a particular vibe to it. I don't know how to describe it. It just feels like if you were walking in a forest where you knew there might be either wolves, lions, panthers, that kind of thing, where you might be getting watched by something that's very predatory. And here we see West Virginia, Cresap Mound, 7 foot 2 inch skeleton found there. Mounds in Iowa, 7 foot 6 inch skeleton, 1897. I mean, this is just everywhere you look. 8 foot, Steelville, Missouri. Another one in Ohio, Montgomery County, 8 foot 1.5 inch. San Diego, 8 foot 4 inch mummy. Yeah, and that's what's fascinating too. We could look to the Grand Canyon. Why is there a section of the Grand Canyon that is blocked off? Nobody can go in there. That in ancient days, they say they found everything from things that resembled ancient Egypt to things that resembled Buddha statues. What the heck? In the Grand Canyon? Wow, what? That's kind of crazy, isn't it? Catalina Island, California, 9 foot 2 inch skeleton, and other 7 to 8 foot ones were found there as well. Are these all truly just photoshopped, an illusion? Is it all BS? No. There's way too much evidence. Lompoc Rancho, California, a 12 foot skeleton. And again, most of these go back into the 1800s when, the settlers were just out there and spreading out and digging their gardens and doing their thing. And look, Ma, look what I got. It's a finger that's as long as my forearm.
Yeah, how'd that get there? It must be some error.
West Hickory, Pennsylvania, 18 foot skeleton. And there's, again, articles from the day that show all this. How about this quote from Abraham Lincoln, quoted before Congress in 1848? "The eyes of that species of extinct giant whose bones fill the mounds of America have gazed on Niagara as our eyes do now." There's a reference to it from President Lincoln. Vampire killer. Just kidding.
That was a good one.
Yeah, right? And, is that Photoshop? It certainly probably is because of, the modern look to it. But, not all are Photoshopped. We can't take anything modern day and trust it now because of the technology. But when we look back to some of those older photos and those paintings, you gotta really wonder. And just listen to the stories, because the stories are everywhere. We have found some amazing stuff out in the desert, Nevada and Arizona, New Mexico. I mean, we've seen stuff that is incongruous, crazy stuff. And we shared some of that with you in the past. And here again, we see an ancient relief that shows quite clearly, I would say, I don't know, what do you think, about 9 foot tall, maybe? 9 foot tall, maybe 10 foot. And here you see, giraffes range from 14 to 20 foot tall. Are these baby giraffes?
I know. They're just little miniature giraffes, and that explains that. And we have this one here. A lot of these, I wondered if they're Photoshopped, but so many of them.
That looks Photoshopped.
It does.
There, because it's so clear.
Well, now I don't think that one's Photoshopped at all. He's just charming. He's just a
nice
cutie
guy.
pie.
He's got a great smile.
But I do remember seeing a lot of these, even when I was little. I was really curious about a lot of these things. So, yeah.
Now you had encounters with Bigfoot
yeah.
as you were growing up in Idaho.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, I would go riding on horseback up in the mountains in Idaho all by myself. And it did always seem like I was being followed. And now looking back and looking at all the other information, when you look into the forest and you see these trees that are crisscrossed, or some are even pulled up by the roots and set in certain positions. I never really, when I was like a 10-year-old kid, I didn't think anything of it until later on. I saw some other information and people alluding to, well, that's a Bigfoot and he's trying to tell you this is his territory. And I even remember crossing over, like some of them will put a tree over a path just to say, don't come in here. And I would let my horse, we'd bounce over the tree and go on in. We didn't know, but I could definitely feel them looking back. Like, we know that feeling in someone's watching us, that spidey senses tingling. I had that all the time, but I was with my horse and dogs and I figured I was safe. I know this time I had my friend Hannah and I were both riding up into the mountains, and we were just talking to each other, what if there's a Bigfoot behind this bush? And I kid you not, that whole bush just started shaking like crazy, and both of our horses just went crazy, turned around and ran down the mountain. So yeah, a lot of experiences. And that thing would also scream. It would scream. It was the most terrifying thing. It was not normal. It was not a mountain lion. So just too many things unexplainable.
Absolutely. In North Carolina, I had something whack the house 3 different times, and I'd find a big branch next to the side of the house, the cabin that was staying in each time, So it's like it took a branch, it just grabbed any old branch, and it came and it just thwacked. And, at that time, Zeke would bark like crazy. I would get up, I would go out and look, and nothing there. But then I did look one morning, and there was a footprint that I would say was like a size 13, 14. It wasn't huge, but the thing was, that morning it was like 15, 20 degrees, and the ground was ice hard. And at like 180 pounds, I don't make a dent at all in the ground. Not at all. I could jump, I could do anything. I didn't make a dent. This was like deep. So this had to weigh, 400 or 500 pounds, I would venture. Fascinating. So Bigfoot himself is fascinating, and there's legends that say that a Bigfoot-like creature, of course it would be called the Yeti, over in that part of the world, guards the entrance to Shambhala. And these beings are, in most cases, they're multidimensional beings. Many beings are able to change their density and just, appear and disappear. This is not really, it's just something that's inconceivable to most people in this time. Now, Hanuman's an interesting one because he's, again, kind of an ape man, complete intelligence of any human, yet has ape-like qualities. And there was a whole race of beings that helped Hanuman build the bridge to Lanka, which enabled them to cross and get Sita, rescue Sita from the quote-unquote demon king Ravenna. And that's in the Ramayana. And the interesting thing about Hanuman was he could change his size. And this gets into the yogic city, the yogic powers. And so he could go from being like a 6 foot tall, 7 foot tall being to something 20, 30 feet tall, even larger. And you see some statues. There's statues all over India that are dedicated to him, showing him in one of the sizes he might actually have appeared as. And there are footprints that are attributed to him and his species all over Southeast Asia and the Indian subcontinent. And, did somebody go ahead and just carve that, or is that an actual foot? I mean, that looks pretty good. This one looks like it's a plaster cast. And that's Michael Tellinger next to one. I forget if that one was South Africa. I think that one's in South Africa. There is one in Siberia, very similar, maybe about a foot bigger, that it was found in a rock in Siberia. That is like, there's nothing anywhere around this area in Siberia. But look at that. So if that's 4 foot, and you could times Well, just say if that's a 4-foot long foot, right, and the average man is 6 foot tall or just slightly under, that would mean this being was probably somewhere between 25 foot, maybe even bigger. Here's another one. These are found all over. Now, all these examples I found, these are mostly over in India and Southeast Asia. Look at that one. Pretty wild stuff. And then this is Judacolor rock. And so I did a video here, and I did one up at the Devil's Courtyard. This is in North Carolina, close to Asheville. And Judacolor rock is pretty interesting because, Judacolor was a Indian, sort of. A Native American of a gigantic proportion. The one thing I could say is, I've explored the woods in this area, and especially like around the Devil's Courtyard, and the vibe there is so unique. It's pretty incredible. You could feel that there's something there. According to Cherokee legend, Judacolor was a slant-eyed giant who lived high up in the Balsam Mountains. He guarded his hunting grounds from Judacolor's judgment seat, today known as the Devil's Courthouse, a site reached from the Blue Ridge Parkway. Once a party of disrespectful hunters came through his land, Judacolor chased them down the mountain. With a mighty leap, the angry giant landed near Caney Fork on a large boulder. Putting his hand down to steady himself, he left his mark on the rock's surface. The impression of his hand can still be seen in the lower right of the rock. And I've put my hand in it myself, and you can see this is the representation of what they say. So more fingers than the typical human, and very, very large. Judacolor's marks have also been seen in other boulders throughout Cherokee lands, including near the mother town of Kituwa, a sacred and prominent Cherokee religious center. Fascinating stuff. And now we're going to share with you guys, this is going to be White Buffalo Calf Woman, and there is noise in the background. Hopefully you can make it out pretty good. And this is talking about, I put the question to her, who are the Nephilim? And White Buffalo Calf Woman is a very, very well-known being amongst the indigenous people here. And yet, she really doesn't come from Earth. She's a stellar being. And so, again, so many times people think, well, it's just like people will believe that a certain entity belongs just to their tradition. And that's not the case. Many beings, like Vishnu, for instance, is known by many other different names to different people. And, it's probably because we're just so comfortable with bhakti and with yoga and with the Vedic system that he gave us that particular name. Again, many tribes just simply would refer to the creator, that more masculine creative energy, as the Great Spirit, and the earth as the mother.
Yes. So with White Buffalo Calf Woman, she feels very, very Pleiadian to me. She is in white. Her energy is primarily white. That's what I see with her. But she's also a teacher. She's also an educator. And she shows herself as a very accepting type of being, very gentle being. Wants to impart knowledge, does not want to scare people, wants to get the knowledge across so that people will remember and not be, taken back by appearance. So a lot of these beings that do come down, they blend themselves with whatever native beings that they're around at that time.
Yeah, again, they're energy beings, so they could take whatever form they want. And when we're out of body, we could kind of do the same once we learn how to do these things. As Cindy was sharing with me the other day that she was seeing Zeke, and there was, like, just right after Zeke had passed, I said to her, because I was getting a weird feeling, "Where's Zeke?" And she said, he's just sitting there on the other side of the door. And I went over, opened the door, and let him in. And then later on, it's like I said, "What's Zeke doing?" And she said, "Well, he's getting the hang that he could actually float." and he could actually fly. He doesn't have to actually run like he did when he was in the physical body.
Right. No, it was adorable because he had not figured out yet that he could walk through walls. And that's why Mike opened the door for him, because he was just sitting there waiting. So it does take some time to transition and understand our energy bodies. And all of our senses are completely different when we move to a different vibratory position.
In some ways, you could think of it as, shedding the skin, like a snake sheds its skin, and the snake still is. It's just getting rid of something that no longer suits it, something that is too small, and it's time to grow. And so it's the same thing with many cases. There are some sea creatures that will use a shell for a house. And then when they outgrow the shell, they drop that shell, they run, they find another bigger one, and then they go into that one. It's the same thing with the spirit. The spirit goes from body to body. Again, we use the Sanatana Dharma, which, you could translate to the eternal path, the eternal way, the eternal tradition. Because when we've asked the galactics, and this, for one, the guides have come to us over the years in a certain order, but it's also because of what we've learned in past lives, and we've just been able to remember so many things now. But when we've asked the galactics, what system on Earth is closest to the truth and the way the universe really works, this is what we've gotten from our contacts at the Galactic Federation, is that when you look to the Sanatana Dharma, that's actually the closest to the way. It's not perfect. There is no perfect system, and how could you encapsulate the all and the way of source? But this seems to be the closest to the way the universe truly does work. So we're going to play White Buffalo Calf Woman.
Word of the Nephilim. I know those stories are twisted and distorted from the reality.
As we look into your history and see what is called Nephilim, we see beings that are from this 3D planet that walked the terrain. There were very few, but they were powerful beings that could take out 100 men that are the size of humans with one blow of their fist. They were very large. Some were developed with very good energies, with simple energies. They were created with energies that could provide them the freedom that they desired to live on this planet without assistance from other entities. There were many that walked the earth, that roamed, that wished to simply live in peace and live alone, but the species of humans will not allow them to live in peace or live alone. They chose to go to a different density as a collective to live in peace and allow your 3D plane to be left alone. They have made many stories with your people before their departure. These stories have since been arranged and twisted so that it does help your controllers. Many people can simply change timelines if they do not wish to deal with certain controlling energies. The controllers have created a world that you live in where they can trap you in their own 3D complex to utilize your energies, very much like the Nephilim. The Nephilim were able to change densities and free themselves. This is what we hope to bring to you as your freedom.
Were they a hybrid between an extraterrestrial race and humanity?
They are similar to what you might consider Bigfoots, but they did not have the same type of skin, nor did they have as much hair on their bodies, but they were highly developed beings that could use their ability to live on this planet. And they chose to change densities to be away from the controllers. They can still phase in and out of your density. Most of them choose to live in peace. There are still some that come to your density and recreate some of the stories they show themselves to humans, and humans speak of their size and the horror that they see when they view them. These beings would frighten you if you did see them. Some are able to create issues and problems on your 3D world, but not all of them are of this frequency. Most of them simply choose to live in peace just above your density.
And were they twice the size of a normal human, or even larger?
We feel they were a little bit larger. They were, we would say, three humans tall, and very powerful beings. We do feel there is crossbreeding between these entities and humans that create another species which has since died out.
Judah Kala was one of them.
We see this Judah Kala as a very powerful yet disturbed being who wished to use too much control to create his desires. He is one that has and can take advantage of your race to he wished for much power, he wished for much control. He has come to your density to create wars with men in some tribal areas. He challenges many beings. This one is created problems that could have been avoided. This one still roams your earth just above your density.
And with us going in the ascension, does that mean some of these beings will become visible again to us more? Or are they moving at the same time that we're moving upwards?
When you move up in density, you will have tangles with some of these beings who choose to make themselves known once again. Many of them will remain hidden to you. Some of them will wish to be seen. This is very dependent on their individual personality and their intentions. We would avoid them whenever possible. This is our suggestion. Find your own way to live in peace and harmony with your planet. If you are able to live in harmony on your planet, then this is what we consider to be heaven on earth. However, so many people have not chosen this, so they are not capable of living in the heaven on earth.
The beings called the Watchers from the Book of Enoch, I feel again that's another distortion of things. Is that the case?
These Watchers were men of a certain science, watching evolution take place. It has been their job for many eons to watch humans and other species evolve and write their findings and add their findings to your galactic history. At some point you will have access to these records once you are able to change densities.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Well, you should release this channel.
So I hope you guys were able to hear that and able to get something from it. So when it comes to like the Watchers, for instance, they're just men. And, again, they're beings that are kind of like historians, just watching and putting things down. So when it talks about, them being locked away for this particular age to the end of this age, yeah, that knowledge is locked away because the controllers don't want us understanding our history, but it will be available to us when we switch density.
Right, and a lot of this is so much of personal choice. And when I look at the Watchers, these are entities. They're very much into evolution. This is their job, to watch, to record, to make sense of, to understand. And I don't get that they're malevolent at all. I get that they're just, it's very important for someone to have an understanding of how evolution happens and a true sense of it too. And they can go through many different densities. They're telling me that these Watchers have the ability to bounce through densities and record in different ways. So they are very, very much an expanded being. I think that's the word I'm looking for. They're very expansive and they're very scientific, and they have the ability to stand back, watch, and record things just as they are. So when will we have access to this information? I feel we're going to have access when we are energetically ready and probably more evolved than we are right now. Many times people, when they hear information, they have to look back to their education and see if it makes sense in comparison to the education they learned growing up. But that's not the kind of information we're dealing with at all. That's more of a controlled type of information. So this is something that we allow come through our bodies and let it make itself understood and known and familiar. So it's just a whole different way of learning and understanding our true history.
And so when we were talking about the Nephilim and the giants, as you can see, there's many different types of giants that have been upon the planet. And we got the information there that many of them chose to leave this reality because of the controllers, the controlling energy, the humans under the controller control, just constantly creating more wars, conflict, and distortion. So, they just didn't want to be here anymore and they left. And again, we can see a lot of this being reflected with other beings. When you think of, look to the Lord of the Rings and recanting some of the mythology there, because Tolkien was, big into mythology, and the beings like the Tuatha De Danann and other ones, sailing off away from mankind, off into where? Off into the West or wherever this represents. Many beings leave the density. They leave the density for different reasons. Some we just descended, while others were able to maintain their vibration and stay in the higher densities. Others didn't want to stay in this reality anymore because we were coming into the Kali Yuga and we're going to be under dark controller influence. And so they just chose to leave. Most beings, when you get to it, out there, they're just like us. It's not necessarily that an entire race is benevolent or an entire race is malevolent. They're more just like we are, a mix of all different energies. And you might catch somebody on a good day, might catch somebody on a bad day, and again, when you see all the atrocities that have happened in this world, all the nonstop warfare, you could think to the Hatfields and McCoys, with that constant clannish fighting going on. And, they're always trying to control us through division and fighting amongst ourselves. Then you could see why beings of a higher vibration wouldn't want to hang around. We could think to the Anastasi. What happened to the Anastasi? They were there, then they were gone. There's all this conjecture where they killed and cannibalized. Why don't we have all these bodies of them? Where'd they go? Again, some beings can, if your desire is strong enough and you're willing to put the effort into it, you can change your density. And this is why individuals can always ascend. So if the person really wants to escape this reality and can untie themselves from all the technology that locks us down into this reality, it is still possible to ascend.
Right. And, we can look to species that they've told us have become extinct, for example. Are we so sure that they became extinct, or did they just choose to move to a different vibratory system?
Yeah, when you bring that up, then it hits a whole bunch of other cases where we've asked the guides, and many beings do. They don't necessarily truly go extinct. They just shift their consciousness and go into a different density. So that can be done on an individual basis. At some point, there will be a collective ascension. As we've talked about with that big solar wave that comes, and that kind of is the end of it for the system. Again, they use technology to control us. And, whether it's the Wi-Fi, the routers, the towers, the cell phones, it's all technology. So when that big wave does come, that's the end of the control. And it's gone. It's fried. When you look to many of the different scientific remote viewing programs that they've had, such as Looking Glass and others, they all see the Earth in 2050 as being a place where it's back to tribal living, back to simple living in harmony with nature, and a lot less people are in the density when they're remote viewed. So it's interesting to see that. So, humanity, just like the Nephilim, is now being faced with that choice to, are you going to stay with the controllers, in which case, you're going to get more of the same, or are we going to ascend and get out from their control?
Mm-hmm. Or are we going to change the way we live and the way we adapt and definitely get outside of that control? We have options, we have choices. It might not seem so super clear right now, but as we move along in time and in a linear way, it will become more and more clear about how the energies are going to separate.
Absolutely. So, were there beings as far as these giants that were perhaps, perhaps fee, fi, fo, fum? I smell the blood of an Englishman, that old thing with you better run for your lives or you might become dinner. Probably the case. Absolutely. There's tons of legends about that. And where there's some that were more benevolent, that's the case too. Again, they ran the whole gambit. Again, when you approach, say, a lion or an elephant, you're going to go up to it and antagonize it? It would be crazy to antagonize it because, they could obviously trample you or have you for dinner. So the gambit runs the whole gambit. There's all, just like with us as far as humans, we're all unique, and again, we all have our good days and bad days.
Yes, and some of us are ornery at times and some of us are not, and hopefully we've expanded your consciousness today. We aim to help people in doing that, and we really appreciate everybody who helps us on Patreon. We really couldn't do this without you. And also on Ko-Fi, you can make it a monthly donation or a one-time donation to help the channel. And also, please look into medicinal foods. It's very, very good for us because awakening starts from within. And let's see, you get, I always kind of mess this up.
Use coupon code EEA and you get a discount, and it does support the channel as well. So as always, guys, look forward to your comments. What's your take on all these things? Again, we have to kind of, our job is to shed light on the darkness of the control system and to make people realize everything that they've been taught is basically a distortion. You have to look past your own tradition, compare all traditions, go within. Ultimately, we'll be able to access the Akashic records and see what happened for ourselves as we go up through density. And Rama agrees. He's right here right now. Yes. As always, much love, God bless, and namaste.
Namaste.